Hello, everybody, and welcome to Running Tales, the podcast where we tell the extraordinary stories of everyday runners. My name's Craig Lewis, and today's guest is the man behind the incredibly successful PGC1 coaching, Josh Schofield. But just before we go into Josh's story, please can I ask you all for a massive favour? We're working really hard to grow Running Tales across our podcast, Substack, YouTube, and social media platforms. And listen, we'd really appreciate your support. I know everybody says it, but it is so important. We need to spread the word about these inspiring stories. So listen, if you enjoy what we do, let a friend or a fellow runner know about this podcast episode or any of the previous stories that you may have heard here. Pass on the word about our Substack articles, including perhaps our most recent story of author and runner Lisa Jackson, who found running again after the sad death of her husband, Graham. Lisa and Graham's story is one of hope in the midst of despair, so please do check that out. Of course, we always love it if you can like or subscribe to the podcast to Substack at runningtales.substack.com or to our YouTube channel where we feature our own running videos and stories, including Michelle and I struggling at various park runs around the country most weeks. Anyway, as I said, this week's guest is Josh Schofield, a former junior male athlete for England who competed in road, track and cross-country events before moving into coaching. His achievements include working at the Loughborough Talent Hub with athletes who were training for England and at the Commonwealth Games and becoming an England athletics talented coach mentor. But his biggest decision and move came in 2019 when he formed PGC1-Coaching to help him get through his master's degree. And since then, more than 250 athletes from 3 continents have been coached at PGC1, and the club has attracted a host of top-level coaches. Now, I've just been chatting to Josh before we started recording here, and one thing he's really keen to talk about is how PGC1 is not just for elite athletes, it's kind of for everybody to get better and to improve along their running journey. But PGC1 really does stand out in a world where running and athletics clubs have become maybe slightly too a penny. So what is it that makes it so special? Well, listen, folks, let's invite Josh into the conversation and find out all about PGC1 coaching. So, hi, Josh, how are you?
I'm very well, Craig. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad at all. So listen, let's maybe start a little bit with perhaps your own running and your own running journey, because I think it sounds as if running was something that's kind of always been a part of your life.
I actually started at the age of 8. So this would be 2006 is when my sort of competition journey started. And I actually started in triathlon rather than running. My dad was quite into triathlon. And I think it was basically to get me out of the house on a Saturday. They used to take me down to junior triathlon training down at Archbishop Holgate School in York, which was good fun. And I'd started competing that year. Ended up winning a couple of races, which I didn't think I would do. And yeah, just kind of fell in love with endurance sport from that point onwards. And then a couple after a sort of trickier year growing, I joined City of York Athletics Club in 2011, and that's or 2010, 2011, and that's kind of when my running journey like properly started. And yeah, from there it was a case of going through the age groups, doing the cross country leagues, the English schools, the inter-counties, doing the track and field leagues, and going up and down the country racing every single weekend. It felt like,
Yeah.
or whatever distance and whatever surface was kind of thrown at us.
Did you find that you liked running and triathlon right from the start? Because actually, we speak to a lot of people who come to running later in life and end up being really good runners, whether they're doing very fast times over 5K or huge distances over ultras. But quite often they'll turn around to and say, "Do you know what? I hated running at school. I found it like a punishment." And I'm just wondering, as
Yeah,
somebody who was, I suppose, good at running and doing well at it and presumably enjoying it, did
yeah.
was what was your experience?
Oh, I loved it. Like, absolutely loved it. I didn't enjoy swimming. I hated swimming. That was
Yeah.
just. I think because I was good at it and kind of had a bit of a natural sort of ability to push myself. I just really enjoyed it. Used to love going out cycling as well, going out on the bike. That was really good fun. But yeah, from a very young age, I absolutely loved it. Loved going to training. And I think that was more kind of looking back, it was more of a social outlet, more so than even just like a sort of physiological outlet, because we had a really, really nice group of lads, all kind of coming up at the same age at York, and we were all really good friends
Mm.
within running and out of running as well. So going to training was like that's like my going to the park and going out on a BMX sort of thing. Going running was what was our massive social thing. So yeah, I think
Yeah.
that was kind of a big part of it as well.
Yeah, and I suppose I guess what I'm sort of pushing at there is, and it comes into what you're doing, I suppose, with the coaching now as well, is how do we get those kids who are obviously perhaps naturally good at this and have a love of running, but don't find it till later because somewhere along the line at school and so on, they're put off by it.
I think the biggest thing is having a really positive and inclusive training environment for athletes to come to. We
Mm,
were really, really fortunate that the coach that ran the group at City of York, he was just the nicest guy ever. Guy called Ian Wilcock. Training was about coming down, having fun. If you wanted to take it really, really seriously, he supported you in that journey. If
yeah,
you literally just wanted to come down, go and run around and just do the session and go home, then again, there was no pressure put onto you that you had to do X, Y, Z. You had to hit these performance outcomes. You had to hit these splits. It was all very athlete driven. And I think creating environments where it's very athlete driven and that the coaching is under kind of sits as an umbrella underneath the athlete, supports and lifts those athletes up to have positive journeys within running and within athletics. If you do that from the start, that allows then people to then progress and to go kind of whichever way they want in the sport.
yeah,
And that group there, there's numerous cases of athletes. There's actually an athlete going to the Commonwealth Games in the 800 who was part of that training group. There's athletes that run for Great Britain, they've run for universities in the States. There's also athletes that are now professional doctors, working in law, working in the city, who are nothing to do with running necessarily anymore. But all of us had that really positive journey, and I
yeah.
think it comes from it, yeah, as I say, being very inclusive and it being kind of athlete driven and not so serious. I think that's where a lot of sport across the UK from a very young age it becomes very serious. It's about who's going to be make it, who's going to be the next person to make it, how are you making it, and actually running such a long journey to success. Actually, you've got to have that love and that foundation of kind of support there to begin with to be able to progress from.
Mm. And you obviously had some success within your own running journey
Yeah.
as I suppose a younger man. It makes you sound old now, which you're definitely not. But yeah, with juniors for England, I think, and then for the north of the country as a senior athlete.
Yeah.
How enjoyable was that?
Oh, they were amazing trips. Like, my probably my favorite trip we did was my debut for the North of England senior team. They took us out to a place called Venta de Baños in Spain, which is a tiny, tiny. It would be basically like going to Wellingborough in Spain, right?
Yeah.
But there was an IAAF gold label cross country meet there. And I raced against Jacob Kiplimo and Salman Barega in
Wow.
a like 10K cross.
Yeah.
And that was just like an unbelievable experience. And I really messed up the start, and you had to like hurdle like over a barrier out of the athletics track that kind of the start area was, and I got pushed. And I was running on the front of the race with Kit Lima and Borrega like on both my shoulder. I'm thinking, I'm in a world of trouble here. I ran like a 5K PB through 5K, and I got to 10K in like 31:20, give or take, and I still had another mile to go. And I was
Yeah.
just absolutely, there was nothing left in my body at all. I was so drained. Um, and what was mad was, yeah, I ran 31:20 and I got beaten by 4 minutes. So
Wow.
yeah, these guys are running 27.5 minute 10Ks on a cross country circuit.
Yeah.
So just those experiences of being like, in races like that, traveling to do like the Armagh 5K, that was amazing, to be able to go do that. And I even kind of fondly look back at going up and down the country to do things like the National League or the national champs and going and staying in a hotel the night before and things like that. And just the opportunities to go and see different places, to go and race your mates, race with friends as well. Yeah, it was a very, very enjoyable experience, racing at that level.
What was it like going from, I'm guessing if you're competing at school and you're doing the sort of times that you're talking about there,
Yeah.
you'll probably be beating everybody and you're probably beating everybody fairly comfortably and sort of thinking, I'm pretty good at this. And then you're out there suddenly against the likes of Kiplimo. It must have been a bit of a reality check. And I guess there must maybe, unfortunately, must have been a moment where you sort of perhaps thought maybe I could become a professional at this, and then you raced against the likes of those people, and you were like, oh, actually, I might not be as quite as
Yeah.
good as I thought I was.
Well, you say that, but actually, really fortunately, I grew up in a very, very strong era of running in Yorkshire. So
Yeah.
actually winning a West Yorkshire League cross country race was almost as good as winning the county or area title.
Hmm.
Forgive me for name dropping here, but my age group was George Mills, Emil Caress, James Gormley, who's run internationally for Ireland.
Yeah.
Got Johnny Shields, who's ran about 13 and a half minutes for 5K as well. So actually, just making a Yorkshire team was nearly as good as
Yeah.
being able to actually go and get a top 15 or top 20 in the national stage. And just counting for if you could get in the top four to count for Yorkshire, you were almost guaranteed a team medal at things like inter-counties. Um, so I was actually quite prepared for the fact of I wanted to go as far as I could with my running journey. When I was very young, I definitely wanted to go professional and become a professional athlete. But racing against these guys from so young, it was like exposure therapy of like, yeah, you're probably not going to be a pro at this. So kind of enjoy the experiences and go as far as you can with it. But there was always a niggling kind of feeling in my head that I needed something else alongside it, and running was never going to be everything to me. I was always going to have kind of something else on the side.
Yeah. When did you first make the move into coaching? Because I know obviously you set up PGC1 in 2019 when you were doing your masters, which is still that's still pretty young to start working as a coach. But I'm
Yeah.
thinking you probably had already started before that, hadn't you?
Yeah, so kind of loosely as I went through my own running career, I did a little bit of sort of coaching of myself. Yeah, I would write my own plans. I'd write my own race plans for the year, and I'd try kind of certain sessions and experiment with things. And then when I got to university, I started to sort of casually help a couple of runners here and there. So I remember that I helped my dad. I wrote my dad a marathon training plan for the Yorkshire Marathon in 2017, I think that would have been. And then a guy called George Phillips as well. Helped George throughout working it up and running. And so yeah, there was kind of a couple of people that I'd helped loosely before I started kind of officially coaching in 2019. But that was a lot of it was mainly due to university. So when in second year we had to do a professional development module, and for that you had to gain a certain amount of time doing kind of activities that would enable you to get a job out of
Yeah.
university. Um, and I was training a lot of the time and didn't have the time or the kind of the funds or the resources to go and get a placement somewhere. People did placements at like Leeds Rhinos or Leeds United and things like that. So I thought, well, I could do some coaching and set training plans, working with athletes, and that might be a good way to kind of start and develop my kind of professional side. And it went really well, and the athletes kind of, as named there, started to progress and do really well,
Yeah.
and got better. And so I thought, oh, there might be kind of something in this coaching game for me. And then just found that I had a real passion for helping other people, and I really wanted to help. I really wanted to help them succeed, and found that that gave me as much fulfillment as succeeding within my own running. And that kind of was the foundation of how PGC1 started.
Mm. And just before we move on to that, I know there was one thing we spoke about very briefly when we were kind of setting this podcast up, and that was where your own running has gone since you started doing PGC1, and that
Yeah.
is kind of well, I think what you said was it's gone nowhere. It doesn't really happen anymore. Is that something you really miss? Is it just there is a lot to do when you're running your own business?
Yeah, I mean, I miss the sensation and feeling of being really fit, and like absolutely ripping like a track session,
Yeah.
running as hard as you can. Like I do miss that a little bit. I don't miss the hard work it takes to get to that point. All the early mornings and the big long runs and stuff. Yeah, that I kind of miss less. I think for me, like I I'm a very all in or all out person, and
Mm.
I don't feel that I have the ability that if I'm focused on the athletes that I'm coaching, I can then also then focus on the session that I've got to do later on. And I've never wanted my coaching to be about funding, a greater goal within my own running or um, anything like that really. So I a couple of I sort of for a couple of years still ran kind of gradually kind of becoming less and less, and probably it was 2022 I just kind of fully hung up the carbon shoes, and then haven't really ran since, mainly because running is my work, it's my passion, it's something that I really enjoy, but I feel like I need the headspace away from running as well to be able to give the clients at PGC1 and the people that I coach everything at work, because if running's then my social outlet and my kind of personal outlet alongside my
Mm.
work, it just becomes all encompassing, and I can't get any headspace and any kind of different perspective away from coaching. So yeah, that was probably ultimately what led me to make the decision to stop running for myself. I just found that I didn't get that same enjoyment factor out of going out myself. And so yeah, I do other activities now instead of lacing up the shoes and going and getting an easy run in.
It's really interesting because my wife Michelle, who I do the podcast with, she runs her own running club, but more importantly, her own like fitness and PT business. And since she's done that, I mean, I'm sure she won't mind me saying she's nothing like an elite runner or a sub-elite runner or anything like that. Very much a recreational runner, but she's done 19 marathons and so on, so she's did a lot of running.
Yeah,
But since she started doing her business, the amount of running she's done has kind of fallen off a cliff to a degree because of the same reasons. It's like after a day of working on other people's fitness, the last thing I want to do is go for a run
yeah.
almost. So it's yeah, it's really interesting that the way that works.
Yeah, and I think to be in coaching, you can't be selfish. It's about it's about putting the clients first.
Mm.
And I don't want to yeah use my running journey and that getting in the way of helping someone else. I think that's the kind of the biggest reason why I don't necessarily go out and try and compete like I used to.
Yeah. So just rewinding back to 2019 when you started PGC1, you talked about it as being something you did while you were doing your masters. Were you already thinking at that point that this could be your inverted commas career, something you took on further, or was it literally this is just going to get me through my degree?
Yeah, like not at all. There was no like long-term aspirational thinking behind it at all. It was a case of let's do this for sort of couple of months, a year or so, see
Yeah.
where it gets me to. And I had no vision really to do PGC1 for longer than a year. Um, and it was my thought process at that point was get through my masters, graduate, try and get a job, but hopefully in nutrition or something of the kind, carry on with my own running, potentially go back up north, and yeah, see where that took me. And none of those things have ever come close to being true and happening.
Yeah. So what did happen? Was it just a case of it took off? You enjoyed it far more than you expected?
Yeah, so I um kind of yeah going back, I set up a Wednesday night interval session which started to gain really good traction, and develop and become, we kind of started having sort of 5 or 6 people down, then it was 10 or 15 and kind of getting up to sort of 20 or so. And I just found I really enjoyed that, and there was a real big momentum of then athletes coming down to the Wednesday nights, signing up, enjoying the plan. Um and and then what happened really after that was COVID hit. So COVID hit in the March, and that was the best thing that happened to PGC1. It's the best thing that happened to me for my coaching, because actually, if I think back to the coach I was at that point, the results that we would have got as a group would not have been to the level that I think they could have been, because I was almost too young in that coaching journey, hadn't had the time to, work on my own development and theories of how I wanted to help athletes. Um, so COVID gave me a really good, great kind of period of time where the athletes had no other distractions. I could also kind of really experiment and work through my own ideas, and that just that became then kind of a just a ignition point really for PGC1 taking off. We kind of basically doubled our client base across that couple of months, because everyone was taking up running and wanted more. And then that's kind of really when I was like, okay, well, what do I want to do in my masters? Do I want to write a lit review, and just get it done, or do I want to really sort of progress my own kind of self growth and journey and see how far I can go? And so I split my masters, and that gave me basically 12 months to make PGC1 as big a success as possible. And by the time I kind of came to start my dissertation a year later, um, I was working in a school coaching young kind of kids. I was uh, doing obviously my masters, working with PGC1 full time. We've got working with a clothing brand as well, and it just sort of was this kind of snowball effect of like that one decision to go full time in it, give it a year, and then it all kind of blew up from there.
That's fascinating that making that jump, that leap of faith almost, and how much of a difference it makes, because it's something I suppose which holds so many of us back in business and probably also within our running as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and also I was really lucky that at that age I was just turned 22. I didn't have a mortgage. I was
Mm,
very fortunate in terms of the living situation that anything that I earned was going to be more than I already had. So there was no risk factor at all. So it was the perfect time to set it up really, because yeah, there was no repercussions if it went wrong. If it didn't work out, then I could just go and potentially find another job, And so I was
yeah.
very, very fortunate in the circumstances I was in, that I was able to go and have that journey.
Yeah. I want to pick up on something you mentioned when you were talking about the growth of PGC1 there, and you were talking about in COVID, you got more people just coming along and starting running almost because of that's what we did in COVID.
Yeah,
I found that quite an interesting phrase because quite we see, you have a lot of very good athletes at PGC1. You have a lot of sub-elite athletes. You have athletes who go out and win races, and sometimes that's what people see. But I know we were talking before about how what you do is kind of for everyone and about getting people to improve whatever level they start at.
yeah, yeah. So we're completely non-selective in terms of how we work with clients. If someone wants to come and join PGC1, our mentality and our journey is very much with that athlete is very much about giving them the tools that they need to be as successful as possible. For some athletes, that is that they want to go out and they want to win races, they want to run really fast times, hit PBs, and that is amazing. We love helping people do that. At the
Mm.
same point, what we do is for a lot of people is provide them accountability, provide them, a training schedule that fits around their life that enables them to go out and run 4 times a week and be the best version of themselves. And both of those things are as important as each other. For us, it's about really delving into the person that we've got in front of us, what drives them, what makes them feel good, what makes them want to be successful within themselves, and supporting that journey. And I think if you kind of delve deeper into coaching philosophies and things like that, it's very if you work on the process of the person you have in front of you and supporting them with what they need, then in general you'll see greater amounts of success rather than 10 times a K at this pace will get you this kind of time. We're
Yeah.
not about that at all. Actually, it's more what is it that drives that person, and then how can we match the science with the art of coaching and enable that person to be, the best runner, best triathlete, best high rocks athlete they can be.
Mm. I think that's really interesting. I mean, I guess if you're talking about some of these athletes who might be looking at finishing in top tens and so on, then hiring a coach is maybe a more obvious decision for them. For recreational runners, I think we all kind of want to improve, we want to get better, but there's a bit of a fear that we went into this because it was fun. It's a
Yeah,
release from the horrible 9 to 5 we do it, or the lovely 9 to 5, but which is still
yeah,
stressful
yeah,
that we do every day and so on. And what can be a bit, I guess, inverted commas, intimidating is the idea of suddenly, oh, I go with the coach, and now I've got to hit this target, and I've got to eat that, and oh my God, this suddenly feels like another job. How do you
yeah.
avoid that happening?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think again it goes back to what I was just saying with the process of enabling that athlete to be successful. It's and a lot of it dials back to consistency, and it's not there's no one session, there's no one run that's going to allow that athlete to be successful. It's the consistency of doing lots of things really, really well over a prolonged period of time. And we really take the time to get to know the athlete, get to know, what their, the time available they've got for training is, what drives them, and what they want out of their running, and therefore support them in that. And I always see that running is supposed to add to everybody's life. It's not to take it away from them, take away from things. So
Mm.
how can we ensure that we're implementing training and implementing a positive atmosphere for that athlete to go out and get their training in, um, and enable them to enjoy it, but not take away from things. And if we're very big on the fact of you get your training sent to you on a week by week basis, but that's a movable document. If it's a case of for that week, don't oh, I can only run 3 times this week. I usually run 5. Cool. Right. Well, we'll take these 2 runs out, get these done. That's all you need to do, and then we'll go
Yeah.
on to the next week. And we're very adaptable and supportive for all of our athletes to ensure that whatever training it is that they can get done, we'll get it. Get the most out of that.
Mm. And I know one thing you have got there is you've also got some really, really good coaches as well.
Yes, yeah, very, very fortunate. So we've got a brilliant coaching team. So yeah, Jack Foot, who's kind of been the coach that's worked with me the longest. Jack's a really awesome young coach, very passionate, very similar kind of mindset to myself and how we want to work with athletes. And then we've got Dr. Bond, who physiologically is potentially the most intelligent person I've ever met. You talk to him about lactate threshold, and immediately he's talking to the biochemical level in the muscle as to how that process is working. And even having done 2 science degrees myself, I'm struggling to get to grips with what he's saying. And Jack's awesome because he can translate that knowledge and enable the athlete to know what's going on as well, which is a big part of kind of what we want to do. Is we're taking the science of what goes on in the body, but enabling anyone to be able to access that and understand it. And then we've got Rianne as well, who is brilliant. So Rianne's a professional triathlete herself, and just qualified for the Ironman World Championships in the professional race in Hawaii, which is awesome. And so she brings a kind of different outlet of being in that performance environment and working with other professional athletes and kind of adds another diverse part to the team. So yeah, we've got a really great coaching team behind us.
Mm. No, it's great to hear that. It must be so exciting for people who sort of come along and join up and get that level of expert advice as well. I suppose this is a little bit going back to what I was saying before with recreational runners and so on. But one of the things we joke about every now and again on this podcast is kind of don't tell me about your VO2 max, tell me about why
Yeah,
you run.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
How do you get that kind of thing into what you do as well? Because you want to be giving people those stats, those training plans, all those things, but also you still want to be finding the fun side of things and the reason why people do this sport.
Yeah, I mean, to answer the question there, first thing is your VO2 max, relatively for pretty much most athletes that we'd work with, doesn't matter. So your VO2 max is relative to probably what you can sustain for between 9 and 12 minutes. So unless you're going to become an elite 3K, 5K athlete, your VO2 max can distinguish your kind of top end fitness against other populations, but relatively, it has very little to do with actually how well you're going to go and perform. So, um, Eliud Kipchoge. There's a really good documentary. I think it's still on YouTube somewhere of the science behind breaking two. And if you see Eliud Kipchoge doesn't have the highest VO2 max of all of the athletes that they chose for the original Breaking Two project. And it's because actually VO2 max isn't that important. So to answer your question there directly, we don't talk about that because it's not that important.
Yeah.
um, but yeah, I mean, again, it's knowing the person and what do they want and what do they need. We have some athletes that love the stats. They need they need all of that data.
Mm.
But I guess as well, we're as coaches, we're kind of that translator of all the data is there for every athlete to see from every run, but what's important and what does that athlete need? And we'll kind of then almost translate and put that data into a package for each person to be able to gain what they need from it. There's some athletes that don't want to know any data at all, and very much in tune with how they feel. And I think for us as a coaching kind of team and working with individuals, it's about aligning those outcome characteristics and numbers along with the process of how we're going about it and developing athletes and the mentality and the psychology behind it and gelling them together using the data to support that, but never getting away from your why, because
Mm.
I have found generally with athletes, the further they go down that data sphere, it's very limiting as a place to be, and difficult to keep progressing. Data's great, but you can make it say whatever you want, and you know I I wouldn't trust something that I've got a nice Coros watch on my wrist right now,
Yeah.
but at the end of the day, this costs Coros a very very small amount to make. Are you going to trust that to define your running journey, or trust the person that's actually doing it themselves, as in the athlete. So yeah, we use the data and it informs part of the process, but actually it's about going deeper than the numbers and never getting too far away from that why. Because if you do, and I did that in my running journey, I became very much driven on I knew exactly what lap split I had to hit for every single distance that I was racing in order to hit a PB. And all I did was just psych myself out of races, because as soon as you start to wobble on that
Yeah.
point, you don't invest, because actually you can't go there, because I had no processes to actually how I was going to go about and run. And if I think back to my kind of two races I'm most proud of, I don't remember a single split that was called to me at any point, because it was a case of I'd gone into that race to go, I am going to run till I basically can't move, and if I do that, I'll be okay.
Yeah.
And yeah, to answer your question, that's kind of how we'd go about it.
No, I find that really interesting because I do see some people who dive really deep into the data, even at a sort of, they're, I don't want to do this level down, but like at a park run level, and they're running
Yeah,
a average park run, and yet they're looking at every aspect of their heart rate and their VO2 max and their splits, and you're like, you just need to run and maybe like do the odd long slow run or the odd fartlek session, because you do a lot better doing that than you would staring at your Garmin all day.
absolutely. Yeah, and that's not to say that that's if that's what people enjoy and they enjoy seeing those
Yeah.
numbers, and they that's what they get their enjoyment out of, then that everyone, you got to do what's best for you. I'd like to challenge some of those people to say, like, okay, well, if we look a level deeper, how much further could you potentially go?
Mm.
But yeah, I mean, it's that's what the really exciting thing about running for me is that we're all doing the same distances, but yet there's so many different ways people go about achieving those, achieving running those distances.
Yeah.
And that's, that difference in people, is really, that's what's quite fun about the sport.
Mm. Would you say, as a coach, that the best way to improve is kind of by having elements of all of those different things and making sure you're doing all of those things? So nutrition and strength training and the long runs and fartlek and some hill sessions, and doing as much of it as possible is going to get you the best results without obviously burning yourself out, I suppose.
I think, yeah, the most important thing is being consistent. So, anyone could go and run 8 times in one week potentially. But if
Yeah.
after 2 weeks of doing that, you then get an injury, then that's not beneficial training for you. So it's first of all working out is what could you do for 20 to 24 weeks straight with no interruptions? How could you build 6 months of this training program? And then going about that and doing that week on week on week. And it's not necessarily in the detail of getting all of the 1% right. That's not what UAC progress is. Getting a 99% of that before and that foundation done beforehand.
Mm.
And being consistent with that. It's a very, very much driven in an aerobic based training program. Again, I think as practitioners, as athletes, we look at the cool stuff at the top of the cake, right? We look at the S&C, we look at the carbon shoes, or this heart rate monitor or this interval session. But actually, the foundation before that is if you go out and run, say it's 4 to 5 times a week. If you go out and run and you do two runs over an hour and a couple of them shorter, you'll be on a pretty good basis to be able to then progress and go forward. Because if you look at the physiological stats behind everything from 5K upwards, it's 99% aerobic metabolism. So you need to have a strong aerobic system. And then from there, if you want to kind of get the level up, it's really good strict threshold training, and not threshold training where you're going above that kind of LT2 line, because that means you're then working at more maximal aerobic capacity and you're not getting the right benefit. If you do some good threshold work in the right correct training zone, not the ego training zone, the correct physiological one, that's going to see you improve again. And if you probably did just those two things really, really well consistently for a long period of time, 12 months, you'd see a massive progression in your training. And then you can start to add the things on top. But you can never get away from that fundamental basis of you're going to have to go and do a decent long run every week. You're going to have to get your easy runs in and build that aerobic foundation.
Mm. Why do you think a lot of people fall off of that path? Is it just simply
It's hard.
we're busy?
It's hard, and it, it,
Yeah.
it doesn't it doesn't sell to say to be really good at running, you've got to go and do it a lot. What sells is to say, you know, this one tiny thing will solve all your running. And
Yeah.
as humans, we want the quick wins because it's easy and it's gratification there and then. And I say this all sat in this position here. I've been, I've done that as well. We all do it. We want that quick kind of gratification and win, because it's easier to go and do that. It's not, if you clip this up as a soundbite, if I, go, you need to go out and run sort of 4 times a week for 6 months to be able to see progress. That isn't something that, turns heads and people buy into.
Yeah.
So I think that's the reason why a lot of people fall off from that. I guess also it's I guess having the right structures to how you go about and do that as well, and having a supportive kind of environment that allows you to go and do that. And people are busy with busy lives, jobs
Mm.
are ever more demanding, families are demanding, so it's not easy to go out and have that guess mindset to go, I'm gonna go out and I've got to go and put this time in. So yeah, it's probably probably the two answers there as to why people fall off that. But if you can stay consistent and stay on that process, the results that you will achieve will be far greater than going and doing an extra gym session.
Yeah, and I think the other thing from my definitely less expert perspective is that, missing that one session, failing for one week is not the end. It's about, keep going and go on to the next week, because that's
Yeah.
the consistency is being consistent over that time span, and one bad week doesn't necessarily put the whole thing to bed.
No, absolutely. And I always say to athletes, no one run changes a training block. And that's both on a positive and a negative standpoint. You know, not hitting one session doesn't mean you're not fit and you're not going to be able to go and hit that outcome goal potentially you've got at the end of the training block. Actually, sometimes I think it's really good to be able to go and have a bad session and come back from it, because you're building then your resilience and that mental resilience that you've got when things aren't going well. Can you still keep going and keep driving through? I think that's actually a really positive thing to see from those sessions. But at the same point, one session going really, really well doesn't mean then you don't have to do all of the things that you need to do to be successful before that. You know, talking of a marathon block, we do kind of a quite a key sort of 20-mile race workout at marathon pace. Just doing that well doesn't mean then you can give up and you're just going to go and fly through the marathon. You still have to keep doing all the little things right in order to be able to go and be successful on the actual race day at the end of the block. So yeah, no one run changed anything at all. It's the culmination of doing lots of runs over a period of time, lots of, getting your right sleep, getting your right meals in, nailing your recovery. That's what enables you to then go out and be the best athlete you can be.
And just rewinding back to PGC1, going now, I suppose 6 or 7 years. How proud are you of what you've achieved with that? And I suppose what comes next?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of jokingly say, oh, I don't have to get a proper job, so it must be getting well. But no, I can't quite. I have to pinch myself sometimes to think actually the group and the training environment and the success we've had over these 7 years. I never would have thought we'd have got to this position ever. And it still kind of doesn't feel quite real at times.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'm immensely proud of what kind of PGC1 as a collective have achieved, what us as coaches have achieved, what the athletes have achieved, and getting us to this position. And in terms of the next steps, I think really it's if we can enable every single or as many people as possible to have a really positive journey in running, learn things about running, learn things about themselves, and be the best athletes they can be. And we can consistently do that for anyone that wants that support. That to me is success. And
Mm.
it's not related to having this amount of numbers, this amount of people run certain times. If we can consistently give that process to every person that wants to have that, then that for me is kind of everything. And I'd love to still be able to wear wear a tracksuit to work in 25 years time. I think that'd be great fun.
Awesome. Oh, Josh, well, good luck with it. Good luck with continuing to move forward on the PGC1 journey and coaching everybody to do such incredible things, whatever their level may be in the world of running. It was absolutely fascinating today. So thank you so much for your time and for joining us on Running Tales.
Pleasure. Thank you very much, Craig.
Thanks again to Josh Schofield for joining us on the Running Tales podcast. I found that conversation absolutely fascinating. So I really hope that you enjoyed it as well. If you did, please go and like and subscribe to this podcast. We are trying to grow it, so we need your help, of course. Also, it would be fantastic if you could check out our Substack channel, www.runningtales.substack.com, which is where we tell all of these stories in written form. We've got a new nutrition feature coming up on there as well, so go and check that out. That should be live in the next couple of days if it's not already. And go and check out our YouTube channel too, where we record videos from park runs and other races and various bits of stuff. So go and check out Running Tales on YouTube as well. Listen, folks, this is a lot of work. We're trying to grow what we do, but we think it's really important. We love telling these stories. So any help you can give us, just tell your friends about it, would be really, really cool. And yeah, thank you again to Josh Schofield for joining us today. What a fantastic conversation it was. And it goes to show that perhaps after all, I was right about VO2 max all along. Thanks again to Josh. Thanks to everyone for joining us. And we will be back next week with another episode of the Running Tales podcast.